have you here tonight. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Barhu.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Servance.
Present.
Mr. Weatherholz is absent. Ms. Washington is absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right. Again, we appreciate that you're here tonight, and anyone wishing to speak to the board, we ask you to please complete a green form, turn it into the secretary, and when you come to the lectern, make sure you say, give us your full name and your address for the record, please. You'll have about 3 minutes, and if you could do less, I do appreciate you, but if you don't, at least you have 3 minutes. We'll move on to item number 3, approval of our minutes, December 18, 2025, Planning Board. May I have a motion, please?
Move that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second? Okay. We have a motion and second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Pass and carries. Item number 4A, and I'll just read it, Ms. You want to read it?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Item 4A, North Shore of Daytona Beach Large-Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, LSCPA, DEV 2024-495, legislative hearing.
Okay. And do we want to do both of them? Present both? Okay. And can you read also item number 4B? And what we'll do, we'll hear both of them and we'll vote on them separate.
Okay. Item 4B, North Shore of Daytona Beach Plan Development, PDG, DEV 2024-494, quasi-judicial hearing.
Thank you. May we hear from staff, please?
Thank you. Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city. Excuse me. Here we go. Okay. This is a request by Peter Traficante. I hope I didn't mess the name up. Kimley-Horn for approval, large-scale comp plan amendment, change of future land use map designation for 175.68 acres from county low impact urban and environmental systems corridor to city mixed use and potentially environmentally significant overlay. Also amending neighborhood V policy issue O. The applicant is also applying for annexation for the parcel to the north, which I'll point out to you, which is 11.2 acres. It'll become part of the neighborhood development area V. Included is DEV 2024-494, which is the PD amendment coming out. The property is located east and adjacent to the ISP I-4. This is the aerial showing, vacant property, and the triangular piece to the north is what's going to be annexed. The proposed amendment to the land use map is mixed use and our potentially environmental system, which potentially environmentally, we should have changed that name, significant PES, which will go over the county's environmental systems corridor. The proposed amendment to issue OV, neighborhood V, is changing the acreage and adding 3 parcels to it. And then the policy is memorializing the PES overlay and to be limited to a maximum trip generation of 3,631 PM trip hours. In addition to a maximum density of 25 dwelling units, 3.0 commercial FAR and a 0.80 industrial FAR. And the second policy is that the PES overlay will be limited to those jurisdictional wetland boundaries that are not permitted for impact, and the mapping of the overlay may be adjusted to ground truthing, which is in our comp plan, wetland and natural systems boundaries as an administrative adjustment to the overlay. And then finally, minimum open space requirement of 20% of uplands and 10% of the required 20% shall be in form of an upland buffer along the wetland jurisdictional line. This is the current land use, which is county, excuse me, to the proposed land use. The impact analysis will show a potential net increase of 0.36 million gallons per day and a potential net increase of 3,032 PM peak trip hours. Again, this is theoretical. This is a land use amendment. The nitty-gritty is at the site plan level. Staff recommends that the large-scale amendment is consistent with the comp plan, does not represent urban sprawl, and the city has available capacity to serve the demand in available water and sewer. Based on staff analysis and review, staff recommends that the planning board members present and voting recommend approval. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission, first reading and transmittal March 4th. Second reading is scheduled for the next available City Commission after review by Florida Commerce and the Pollution Growth Management Commission. That concludes my portion.
Okay.
And then Dan Lee will be doing the.
Okay, we'll hear from our other staff.
Good evening, Danielle Pettick, Senior Planner. This item is a request to rezone approximately 175.68 acres of property to Plan Development General for mixed-use development with industrial, commercial, and residential uses. So the property is located on the south side of International Speedway Boulevard at the terminus of LPGA Boulevard. The future land use, like Doug just went over, is Volusia County, and the zoning is also currently Volusia County, which will be rezoned to Plan Development. And this is the aerial showing the vacant property. So the property is vacant with several wetlands, and the applicant is requesting the rezone to develop the property with a mixed-use development with industrial, commercial, and residential uses. The proposed initial development program is 773 residential units, 224 square feet of commercial, and 800,000 square feet of industrial. There are two concurrent applications with the PD rezoning request, which is a large-scale comp plan amendment that you just heard, and the annexation request for the 11.15 acre parcel at the north end of the property. So approval of this PD is contingent upon adoption of those two requests by the City Commission as well. So this is the overall development plan, which shows the mixed-use area, which is in the blue hatched color, and then the wetland preservation areas around it. So with the PD rezoning, there are several land development code modifications and waivers. They are described in more detail in the staff report and the applicant's waiver and benefits letter, but I will quickly go over them here. So first, the applicant is modifying the lot standards for residential uses such as lot area, width, depth, and setbacks. The code allows PDs to develop their own lot standards such as these. Sorry, I went too far. Second, they are proposing to reduce the distance that self-storage development can be from a major thoroughfare from 500 feet down to 300 feet. And next, the applicant is modifying the parking standards for certain uses and to establish parking ratios within the PD agreement. For landscaping, the applicant is requesting to waive the requirement for building perimeter landscaping for cottage-style rental products, which is normally required for multifamily, and to waive the requirement for internal property perimeter buffers and landscape strips. The external property perimeter buffers will still be provided, as well as buffers between residential and industrial uses, except where adjacent to preserved wetlands. The applicant is also proposing modifications to the sign code to create a master sign program and standards within the PD. And this is their sign plan showing the locations of the signs, which you can see with the little letters. And these are the general sign types that they are proposing within the PD. Also, for signage, they're requesting a waiver to allow billboards within 100 feet of the right-of-way of Interstate 4. The code limits billboards to within 100 feet of Interstate 95 and not I-4, thus the waiver request. For sidewalks, the applicant is reducing the sidewalk width for certain commercial developments from 7 feet to 5 feet and is proposing an 8-foot sidewalk on one side of the road where adjacent to preserved wetlands instead of 5-foot sidewalks along both sides of the road. And finally, the applicant is modifying the fence height limitations to allow an 8-foot fence on the exterior perimeter of the industrial areas and multifamily areas for security purposes. So with that, staff recommends the planning board forward the rezone of approximately 175.68 acres to Plan Development General to the City Commission with the recommendation of approval. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to forward a recommendation to the City Commission. And the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by City Commission for first reading on March 4th, and we are anticipating the second reading will be around May 20th, 2026. So that concludes my presentation, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Okay. All right, so what we want to do is go ahead and, are there any questions for the staff or either one?
I just want to hear from the applicant.
Yeah, it's good. Then, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
No questions for staff? Okay, may we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Jessica Gao with Cobb Cole Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard, Daytona Beach, Florida. I will touch briefly on the land use and the rezoning and then here for any questions. First, I want to say all of the seats are throwing me off because Mr. Barhu is over here. The last time Captain Lee was here, he was over here for me. And so it's all welcome, and it's exciting to have you all here. This request is bringing in 11 acres of property. The remainder of the site is already incorporated into Daytona Beach. On the land use side, the nicest thing I can say is that it's messy currently. So we've got 165 acres that is in Daytona Beach. There are references in the neighborhood policy to it being mixed use and potentially environmentally sensitive, but the city mapping system was not updated to those categories. The neighborhood policies also reference low intensity urban and mixed use. And so when you're looking at the comparison of uses and that trip generation, what's in the neighborhood policy is mixed use. You know, it's got over 500 units already permitted, over 400,000 square feet of retail and commercial outlined in there. But when we compared, we based it on the county land use, which was before that policy, which was low intensity urban, very low generation. When this came in, I think the city acknowledged in that policy that that low intensity urban land use is not appropriate for this property on the interchange. That's why they envisioned it for more of those mixture of uses. So we have the annexation, we have that neighborhood policy shift, we're bringing in that potentially environmentally sensitive area and clarifying that 11 acres overall. On the zoning side of things, the land use requires a plan development. So we have a PD here. You heard some of the unique features and modifications. I call them lessons learned. The only unique waiver that we have not used on other projects, you see a lot of them that we've pulled in for the cottage style and for some other uses. The only unique one is the billboards on I-4, and I can confidently say that that is because when the billboard regulations were established, we didn't really have any property on I-4. We've kind of annexed in along there from that standpoint. So from a policy perspective, when Danley and staff pointed this out, I said, yeah, they're allowed on the interstate. They said 95. I said, ooh, we've never dealt with that on I-4. And so we're just clarifying that I-4 is included in that policy standpoint of interstate. I do want to point out that the concept plan included and the PD agreement contemplates a minimum preservation of 70 acres of wetland. So that wetland core in the property is intended to remain untouched. That is a requirement of the PD agreement for that 70 acres to remain set aside in its natural state, similar to what we did for Oasis when that PD came through. And the project also includes a potential dedication of right-of-way if LPGA is extended across. I think that that potential is pretty limited these days. I don't know that DOT still has plans for extension of LPGA. What we're building it in, just in case, or if the city wants to take on that project or county, we'd love to see that transportation network expand. Beyond that, the zoning kind of pulls in a mixture of uses. We've got a sign plan because, as you guys know, if we look at it on a parcel by parcel basis, it can have 200 square feet of signage over 175 acres. It just doesn't make sense. So we pulled in that master sign plan. We are happy to go over any of the modifications. We've got the Kimley-Horn team and development team for questions. But as I said, the only new waiver or unique one that it does not match the development across the way at Entrada and in this corridor is the billboard clarification. So with that, happy to answer any
I didn't
questions.
hear your last modification.
The billboards along I-4 to clarify it's not 95.
Okay, questions for our applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Mills.
I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Let's start with 4A. You requested, what, maybe you might want to bring the guys up or the engineers. Flooding, okay? You're going to save 70 acres of the wetland, okay? And I was going through your report, and I noticed that there are a lot of endangered species.
Potential habitat. We have to do a full survey to see if there's
Right,
any out there.
right.
Yeah.
And your flooding or the water. This is an area where when it rains, it floods, and that's what the area is for, to maintain the water. Where is it going?
Sure.
And
I'm
what
curious
about
myself.
the habitats? You have I see some species that are endangered or threatened on your report, the environmental report.
So Brian Ashby, Kimley-Horn, 6876 Marwick Lane, Orlando, Florida. So to answer your question about the flooding concerns, we certainly understand. We've done a lot of projects within this area, just down the street, understand the concerns with flooding. Right now, the property is a portion of it is FEMA Zone A floodplain, and what that means is FEMA has no idea what the flood elevation is. They have never done a study to determine if it does flood, what the elevation is. It's their best guess. And so the next step after this is, if we are successful in the rezoning, the next step from this would actually be to do a base flood elevation study. And what that would do is we would create a model. We are actually the headwaters. This property is the headwaters. So that means the furthest most upstream land area that drains north through a slough, an existing slough. And other properties have had to do base flood elevation studies as well. And so what we would do is take the information that they've developed upstream or downstream of us and add on to that with what the existing conditions are for the 100-year flood, and establish what that base flood elevation is, how much it does flood within the land, and to what area. And then that would have to be reviewed by city staff, signed off, and then sent to FEMA for further approval. Once approved, then we would have to do what's called a no net rise to surrounding properties. So whatever we propose to develop on the property, we have to then prove to FEMA that we would not impact any of our downstream, or if we had upstream neighbors. And that's something that is happens all the time, especially these days with high and dry sites becoming less and less available. There's a lot of sensitivity to flooding. And so we have to, as the engineers, prove to FEMA that we will not impact any of our upstream or downstream neighbors. So we're not at that point yet from a flood perspective. It's much a flood modeling perspective. It's very early on in the process, but we will not be able to break ground, get approval on a permit until we prove that to the city and FEMA and get our approvals there.
Now, my concern is that if we say, oh yeah, go ahead, and FEMA says no, what happens?
Yeah,
FEMA wins.
FEMA wins.
My thought pattern, and I might be wrong, shouldn't you do that up front first before you come to us to say approval?
Yeah.
And then have an idea.
Great.
So we can say, oh yeah, that's fantastic. The flood part of it is taken care of, and we agree. If we agree to a disaster, I'm not saying it's going to be a disaster, but a flooding incident or an environmental impact incident, we would have approved it before FEMA says, no. And then this would give validity to your request. And I don't feel comfortable with that. What I would like to see, right, is to say, for you to show me, like how you show me your environmental assessment with the trees and the threatened and endangered species. I would have loved to have seen something like that tells me that it's okay in terms of the flooding area. Even because when you look at the history of this area and with the new construction coming in, the new construction is causing massive floods in just about a lot of neighborhoods that surround it. That area is like the last vestige for the environment. It's an environmentally sensitive area, not only for the species, the trees, but also for the issue of flooding. So my idea would be to, let's get this out of the way first before we before we, it's like putting the cart before the horse.
So if I can, and then maybe I would have Dennis weigh in there too. We don't do flood studies at this level, mostly because we don't know what we're allowed to build yet. And those flood studies are detailed on the exact square footage of impervious surface that ends up on the site and all of that. And so if we were to do a study now based on theoreticals, it would not be accurate. It'd be a waste of time and money, I think, and city review power. But we also don't do it because we know that at this stage, and I guess you could ask for a modification, but I would never suggest it to a client, is that we have to meet all of those regulations. And not only does FEMA have regulations we have to meet, but the city says if you are developing within a floodplain, if you're going to have any impacts to that, you have to compensate it fully, and here's how. And none of that can be modified through this process.
Yeah, and Mr. Robinson, if I can add, about 12 years ago, in the city of Daytona Beach, we used to require a site plan with a plan development rezoning. It was decided about that time that the city commission says, no, that's an onerous requirement to put on the applicant to go through all of that process when they were going to have to do it later on during the site plan process. So they were not going to require the site plan with the rezoning level. They're going to require them to do the engineering after the zoning level, after we get past this point, when they come in for their planning or their site plans, and that's when they're going to have to demonstrate they meet those requirements.
And so I will say that this board will see those flood studies and the review of all of those in the context of a site plan. And so at the rezoning phase, we've got a theoretical maximum development program, but we are certain that all of those cannot be built on this site, right? That's why city staff says it's a theoretical maximum. We say it's theoretical once you fully engineer it and you look at stormwater and you look at the floodplain impacts and you look at all of those things, it's going to get narrowed down into what can actually be built on this site. And that's something that they understand as we go through this process.
I understand, however, you have an idea of how many homes you're going to be building, how many in the area that's going to be affected. So theoretically, you could provide information as to the impact or a possible or probable conclusion that FEMA is going to make, or whether or not your idea is feasible. I think what you're asking us to do is to give validation to your project and then take that validation to FEMA to get it approved. You know how many homes you're going to be building.
We don't.
Your proposal.
We have a theoretical initial development program because the city likes to see some idea of what could be built. On this site, we also have maximum amounts per use category as a starting point. So we say that 40% of it has to be set aside for conservation uses no matter what. And then beyond that, there's a threshold for how much can be residential and how much can be commercial and how much can be industrial. We have no dedicated end user at this time that I can tell you. We have no design that we know exactly what's going to happen, which is why we have a crosshatch of a PD plan. And so we're going through this process because the land use requires us to do a PD. We cannot just ask for a standard rezoning on this property where you say, here's your list of uses and here's what you can do. So we're going through and adding that 11 acres and saying, this is the zoning we have to have. Here's a potential option for the site to look at. And so I completely understand the sentiment. If this was one of those projects where we say, this is exactly what we're bringing to you. We've got 320 units. This is how it's going to be laid out. This is the setbacks. We could have some initial figures and thoughts on comp storage locations, but we do not have that in this case.
However, your modification is based upon the numbers that you've given us. You're asking us to waive some of our land development code requirements based upon the numbers that you've given us.
Not based on the numbers, just based on the product style. So
Well,
like for cottage
the
style,
product
what we run
style,
into and all that.
Yeah, but the products, in order for you to develop the product style, you've got to have, I'm going to build 5 homes approximately, or 10 homes, or 10 buildings for this and this. So, in your engineering product, you're going to have an idea of what's going to happen. Or, you do have an idea of what's going to happen if you build 100 homes or 172 homes, what the impact is going to be.
Right, what we don't know is the difference between if that's 100 multifamily, which could be allowed under this PD, or 100 single family, which would be a different layout and a different need for flooding, or 100 cottage style.
I understand that, but your proposal is for 172 homes.
That's additional in the land use. It is not the concrete number, we just have the density that we're looking at, the capo.
I have a quick question just related to what Mr. Robinson's asking, and it's really probably maybe more for Dennis, but my understanding, I'm the new guy here, so my understanding is what we're, thank you, what we're doing here today really is establishing the use of the land through a PD, and that's what's going to allow for you guys to ultimately do the additional study, which will allow you then to be able to create a design around that study that could be somewhere up to 172. But based on what you learn from that study, it may have to change because you may have to meet certain requirements in order to be able to get things approved by both the city and by the state and by the federal government. So that's my understanding. Am I right, Dennis? Like right now, today, that's really what we're doing.
That's exactly right. And their obligation is they have to meet all of those requirements.
Right. That's written in here. I saw that. Yeah.
That's there. So.
Okay.
And I do also just want to clarify on habitat. The species report, if you look at the summary, it says that it's not suitable habitat for most endangered species, the gopher tortoise and the indigo snake, because they like high and dry areas. And we've got some wetland areas. So the species report that was completed said they saw some black bear scat, politely, but that is it. And it may be suitable for sandhill crane habitat, like most of Florida. You can see them walking down the road all the time. But everything else, what we typically see, scrub jay, gopher tortoise, indigo snake, this property is not suitable for any of that habitat, so that wasn't a concern.
But even if that was, it would come out in an environmental survey ultimately during the process.
Correct. We'd have
And
to
that
do a
would be
survey.
dealt with however the state requires you to deal with it, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Your environmental impact assessment does show some species that are living on this property.
It says they saw raccoons and white-tailed deer, but the summary says it's not suitable habitat for most protected species. That's on page 8 of the report.
But, one of my concerns, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead.
But we have taken LPGA, right, and we have reconstructed that environmental area from, all the way from I-95, the new subdivisions on there, and all the animals and the birds have been impacted with nowhere to go. Now they've probably discovered, of where you guys are going to do your project. What happens to the species that are in that area?
So it's a balance. I would say when the LPGA area was dedicated, the city and county worked very closely together to make sure that Tiger Bay Mitigation Bank was also established as a set-aside of forever conservation land for those species. On this site, and I think in all of the large-scale sites that we come forward with through this process, we make sure that we set aside large tracts of contiguous habitat. So the 70 acres of wetland that will remain on site will be there forever for that site. It'll be under a conservation easement at the end of the day. So that will remain untouched. So working with the city and at the county level to create mapping of conservation areas and wildlife corridors so that they can move freely through the county to those large areas while directing development, because we're going to grow, we're going to continue to expand as a community, as county, a state, to where it makes sense for growth to go along major roadways like International Speedway, where there are utilities available to serve development, while carving out those clusters of conservation and wildlife protection is huge. Volusia County overall is in 42% conservation. that could never be touched or modified, which is a leader in the state of Florida in terms of conservation land set aside. I think a lot of that acreage falls right outside of the Daytona boundary, but in close coordination with the city and that coordination and master planning.
You have requested, 11 acres to be annexed?
Correct. Yep.
What is the difference in terms of conservation between the county conservation and the city conservation?
You mean the city's potentially environmentally sensitive overlay in the county? Mm-hmm. So the county had this as low impact urban, not their conservation category. So when it's coming into the city, we're adding a label that it has that potentially environmentally sensitive overlay. So it theoretically has more protection in the city than it did in the county for that 11 acres.
Yeah, and what that designation does is it says, listen, we're not exactly sure what's occurring here, but when you do develop, you do come in for this site, you're going to have to do everything that's required to determine exactly what is on that property. These were lines that were drawn thinking there could be something here. You're going to look at this when you develop it, and that's what they're required to do with this overlay.
Okay. A couple of my concerns to follow up a little bit with Mr. Robinson, the flooding issue, because it floods on International Speedway Boulevard also, and all of that water comes off from those wetland areas. I know as far as the species that's out there, when you go in with tractors and loud guns and all that stuff, they're going to scatter. You're not going to see them. Now we're seeing them along the LPGA between Margaritaville and LPGA and all that. You see they're on the street, so we know there's wildlife out there. Those are some of my concerns. Some of the other concerns are you asked for some modification, a lot of modifications, as a matter of fact, and one of them is the sidewalk. Well, we're in a piece of land out here. I know you're trying to put as much as you can on the land that you're going to use, because you do have some wetland that's preserved. But again, modifying sidewalk, you have an idea what you're going to build, you have an idea what's going to go there, you have a vision of something going to go there. And I know one of the questions from the neighborhood is about the stormwater and the compensation storage, and how it impacts the neighbors, how it impacts the travel for the community. Those are things that are real concerns, especially in the last few years. We've had major flood issues, especially along the LPGA and the 92 and that whole area there, because it's a low area. And if you go into the land, that whole street floods out in there. So they were concerned, we're concerned. Have those been addressed properly? I know studies will be done.
Yeah, so what I will say in general on a few of those topics is especially relating to stormwater and comp storage, and I can get corrected by our engineers as we go. But that has been looked at. I think we definitely saw during those last storms along ISB, especially at that interstate with LPGA, flooding issues, retention of water. Yeah. As I think all of you know at this point, DOT is coming in to take ownership of LPGA from Williamson all the way out to ISB. And as part of that review, the phase that they are in right now is looking at the drainage needs, not only for that improvement, but for the current condition, because they see the issue that exists out there. And so when Entrada came in, which is directly across the street from this site, if you recall, that one had a nice pond feature along the front as it was coming in. One of the first discussions that they had after they approved their zoning is reaching out to DOT and saying, where do you need ponds? Where do we need to put in infrastructure here so that we can support what's going on our site, what DOT is going to do to improve the roadways, and also the existing condition. Those same conversations will happen with this group, because DOT is going to look at the surrounding area, and we've got that potential LPGA extension set aside in this site that would include stormwater as well. The overall discussion on stormwater and comp storage, I think, is regardless of a zoning. If we were coming in to ask you for a BP zoning or BR1, a city standard zoning, which we can't do. We have to have a PD here. We're required to. We'd have to meet the same standards as we do in this PD. There's no changes at that point. So if any development is happening on this site, it is meeting the city stormwater guidelines, the city's compensating storage guidelines, the state's guidelines, and the federal government guidelines. All of those boxes have to be checked before anything is constructed on this site. And we want to get out ahead of it and build relationships with DOT and those agencies that are looking at those needs in this corridor.
Okay, go ahead.
To touch on, No, I'm not going to correct you on anything. You said that beautifully. To touch on the waivers about the sidewalks, the waivers that we're asking for are actually to help reduce runoff. Going from a 7-foot sidewalk to a 5-foot sidewalk still meets ADA compliance, right? But it's less impervious surface area that we're going to be adding to the site. Instead of having 2 5-foot sidewalks one on either side of the road, going to one 8-foot wide sidewalk, which is honestly a nicer feature adjacent to the preserved wetlands that we are going to preserve. But again, that is less impervious. Instead of having 10 foot wide of concrete, we would have 8. All of that is in a way to help still provide safe pedestrian passageway, provide ADA accessibility, but do it in a way, because we understand the flooding, right? Do it in a way that helps reduce runoff overall. So still build what is, like I said, walkable and meets city and federal codes, but do it in a way that helps reduce runoff overall.
Okay. And again, for me, it's the amount. First of all, we just have land. You can put anything there. You can ask for no modification. But there's a whole list of modifications you've asked for that tells me you have something planned to build it and you want to use as much space as you can, which is what a normal person would do. But we're saying I think it's just a lot of modification, and I have a concern with that.
And I know that we are sensitive on modifications to number, but I think we could go through this list one by one, and I think we've talked about this before. If there's one that you guys say we can't support that waiver, we would rather you make a recommendation and say approve subject to the condition of removing this waiver. So if the sidewalks were an issue and that was included, we could take a look at that, because again, we don't have a development plan. But we could go through this list and I could tell you the first project we did it on, every project we've done it on since, and why we have that rubbing point in the code of why we've asked for this in the first place. So that is kind of how we created that list.
Understood. All right, any other questions for staff?
Going back to your waivers, Mr. Chair, please. With the amount of waivers that you're requesting, it's almost like you want to rewrite the entire code book.
We'd love to. Let us add it.
Which, but for me,
We don't have to.
to feel comfortable with it, there's too many modifications. There's too many waivers. And I'm not I don't really want to go through them one by one. I mean, that's your prerogative, but that's just overwhelmingly too many modifications, too many waivers, which indicate to me that there is a lot of issues with the project. And maybe we ought to go back to the drawing board and see how we can reduce and build within our, the rules.
So I would push back and say it may be a concern with how the current code is written, and that as we come forward with mixed-use developments, and we've had this discussion before, the land development code is set up for your standard one parcel is coming in for development. When you look at large scales, 175 acres, 180 acres, 200 acres like we have out at O'Connor and Oasis and even the Sungate Industrial Park, all of those projects are on their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th PD amendments, because as we go through the development process, we snag on something and we say we have to come back and take 8 months to go through this process to fix it. And so what we did with this site is work with city staff and say this is where we've run into issues on these master plan developments. We think probably there's great potential for these to end up in the code at some point as modifications. But city staff is very busy and underpaid and overworked. I will pitch that for them.
That's all we.
Job security.
I say, as you guys are as volunteers.
Job security.
And where a
Throw that out
PD is
there.
required, building these in before we get to the issue makes sense. And I understand looking at numbers versus the content is saying it's a lot. But honestly, if we went through them, and if you don't want to, that's fine. But if you went through them, I think you'd say, yeah, that makes sense. We saw where that was an issue. Yep, that makes sense. We saw where that was an issue.
And some of them, I have to say, it does make sense to do some of it, especially, for example, the signage. Okay, yeah, I can understand that one. But the parking, 3.5 per 1,000 feet, the landscaping. Okay, some of it that makes sense because you can have it more on one side. But why are we taking out some of the buffers? Again, depends on what you're building, all of it. So, questions. I know we have already read our package. We're not going to bore everybody with that. Any other questions for staff? For applicant?
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
No? Okay, we have some folks to speak. Thank you very much. Mr. John Nicholson. And that's for item 4A.
This is also the applicant.
Oh, that's applicant. I will ask again.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I don't want to use the word loophole, but it appears because we didn't have any property on I-4, our desire not to have billboards on expressways is the intent. Our intent was not to have billboards on expressways. Because we annex in property that has an expressway, I believe that the intent would go to the expressway, not to the land development code specific language of saying I-95. So you don't have to give them the right to put a billboard when we don't want billboards on expressways. So I'm asking you, I know there's a little loophole there. They're saying, well, we didn't have the foresight to think that we were going to eventually someday annex into I-4. Our lack of insight doesn't mean we have to give them the billboards. So please, if you would, in that one instance, everything else is fine. In that one instance alone, I would ask you to look at it very carefully and please say no.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have the applicant. I don't know if the applicant wants to come. Okay, you'll do it, Jaci. Okay.
I just want to clarify for John, the only place in the city that billboards are permitted are expressways. So it's the opposite policy. It's that right now they are only permitted on 95, and you can convert some along ISB to digital. So that is and it's a policy question. We'd love your insight, and then commission will decide that.
I've got a question. Is there currently a billboard on the property along I-4? Okay. I was wondering if there might have been one existing that it might have been.
No, it's not a non-conforming sign. Yep.
Okay. All right, I don't have anyone else. Would there be anyone else to speak to item 4A or 4B? Nope. All right. Board, we'll take it each one at a time, and I'll ask for a motion for item number 4A.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4A.
Okay.
I second.
Oh, Scott Lee. That's it, Mr. Lee. Yeah. Sorry.
We
Okay.
got a motion and a
Yeah,
second.
so we have a motion and second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
No.
Opposers has, okay, 1 nay. Yeah,
4-1.
4 to 1. All right. And item 4B, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve 4B.
Can I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right? Aye. So it's 2.
2.
Okay, so the motion passes and carries. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, hold on. We're good. Go ahead. Item 4A is 4 to 1. Mr. Robinson. Yeah, and then item 4B, there's 2 no's. That's Mr. Robinson and myself.
And the motion passed 3-2.
Right, motion passed 3-2. Okay. I'll give Ms. Washington a second here to catch up. And okay, we are ready. Would you read item number 4C? Okay, Ms. Washington is going to read item 4C for us, and then we'll hear from staff.
Item number 4C, Checkers Wall Mural, DEV 2025-586, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Yes, good evening, Dana Lee Pettick, Senior Planner. This item is a request to approve a wall graphic or mural for an existing Checkers restaurant. So the property is located at 898 North Nova Road. The future land use on the property is retail. The zoning on the property is business retail. And the aerial shows that there's an existing Checkers restaurant there. So the applicant is requesting approval to place wall graphics on the north and south sides of the existing Checkers restaurant on North Nova Road as part of the overall improvements to the development that they are working on. So the wall graphics or murals require review and approval by the planning board based on compliance with the standards in the Land Development Code. So this is the existing Checkers restaurant as seen from Nova Road, and these are the proposed wall graphics for the building. So wall graphics must comply with the standards in the Land Development Code. So first, the wall graphic or architectural embellishment shall be applied to a prepared wall surface free of cracks, peeling paint, or stucco, and shall be covered with a protective coat to minimize deterioration. So the wall graphics are proposed as part of the overall improvements, like I mentioned, to the Checkers restaurant, which includes exterior renovation and preparing the wall surface for the mural installation. So per the applicant, the mural will be printed wall panels with the UV protective film to minimize fading and deterioration. So second, wall graphics and embellishment shall be for the aesthetic enhancement of the building. The scale, design, intensity, and character shall be consistent with the design of the building and compatible with the building and surrounding structures. So the wall graphics are consistent with the design and character of the existing buildings and the proposed improvements. So as you can see here, these are the proposed elevations that show their improvements and the wall graphics and where they're proposed to be located. And here's a little rendering that they did to show how it will incorporate into the overall building design. So third, no written messages, logos, arrows, or bare bulb shall be part of the wall graphic or embellishment except for signage, which would otherwise be permitted by the Land Development Code, and any such signage shall count towards the maximum signage allowed. That's a summary of that big long standard there. So for this wall graphic, no portion would be considered signage, so the wall graphics are in compliance with this standard. So finally, wall graphics or embellishments shall be applied and constructed strictly in accordance with the approved application. Any deviation from the approved plan or rendering in materials or style shall require removal of the wall graphic or embellishment with 5 days' notice. So the wall graphics, per the applicant, will be installed as shown in the elevation and will comply with the building permits and the wall graphic manufacturer's installation and specifications. So I did take a look at their exterior renovation building permit, and it does say that specifically on the permit. So once that's approved, the wall graphic will comply with that. So therefore, staff finds the proposed wall graphics or mural meets the standards in section 6.10.J.13.D of the Land Development Code. So staff recommends the planning board approve the wall graphics for the existing Checkers restaurant located at 898 North Nova Road. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff? Comments?
No, I think it's a good idea. I drive by that road all the time, and I don't, so it would be a great improvement in the visualization of that area. It would be a great improvement. It's nice. I liked it.
Yeah, the Checkers has been there for a while, so their overall improvements are going to make it look a lot better.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's busy now as far as the colors with all the checks, but in the mural.
It matches Checkers.
Yeah, it does. It gives it a new look.
Yeah, we just hope that people don't, slow down and cause accidents.
Okay. All right. May we hear from the applicant, please?
I'm Russ Bernstein with Checkers Drive and Restaurants, 4300 West Cypress Street, Tampa, Florida. And thank you all for that, and thank you for the recommendation. I really don't have much to add. I'll keep it very straightforward. We have gone out of our way to make sure there's no branding, no advertising, that it's strictly artwork. And for those of you that do travel down that street, with all the other improvements, I don't know, can I share this? Yes.
Yeah.
This is an actual photo of a project that looked just like Nova Road. We just recently completed in Apopka. So it's a huge improvement. We know it needs love, and we're trying to do it.
May I ask, I have a question for you. Are they going to do something with the parking lot and parking area and the drive area? The concrete,
potholes, things like that.
Yeah, little stuff like that.
Yes.
Because you're adding to this. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Building.
Thank you.
It'd be a shame to redo the building and not do the parking area.
No, absolutely. It's gonna, all the potholes are gonna be fixed, broken curbs are gonna be fixed, blacktopped if it's asphalt, restriped,
Thank you.
so.
That would definitely add to that area there and really bring it up a little bit. And I know they had a little flood issue, right, a little more into the mall area there. Hopefully they corrected that, because normally the water backs up to where the Checkers is. That's on it's on the Nova Road side. When it rains, all the water comes down to a drain area right at the front on the east side of it.
In front of the Checkers?
It's on the southeast side of Checkers, yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, but
Yeah.
when I get back to the office.
Yeah, that's just something to take a look into, because sometimes folks can't walk through, you can't drive through, you
Really?
can't, yeah. And
we
some of
weren't
it, I
gonna be
know it's
able
the
to get there.
mall's responsibility probably. What is that, Walgreens or whatever is on the corner there? What's on that building? Whatever that corner building is, it's on the east side of that.
Yeah, and it could also be a maintenance
Yeah, it's
issue
a
with
beauty,
the
it's a
drain that's
beauty
not gonna
supply
Exactly.
place.
We'll have somebody,
Beauty supply
we'll have
place.
folks take a look at that, absolutely.
Yeah, so something
Thank
that
you for
affects
bringing that up.
Checkers,
Are
absolutely.
you gonna redo the one on ISB and MLK?
We have plans just on a broader scale. We have plans over the next several years, probably 3.5 years, to redo nationwide. So you're one of the first ones out of the gate, Apopka, now you. And we will circle back to ISB.
You know, it would be nice if you just could do them at the same time. It would be nice. I'm just saying.
I'll talk to the boss.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be, consistent with your upgrades.
Exactly.
It would be really consistent.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, are there anyone wishing to speak for item 4C, for or against it? All right, and the only screen sheet I have is Mr. Russell. Okay, if not, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approved agenda item 4C, quasi judicial hearing, wall graphics approval request, BEV 2025-585 Checkers wall mural.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. It passes. Carried. Thank you so much, and good luck, and thank you for upgrades. May we have item 4D, please?
Item 4D, LPGA Medical Center Phase 2, Site Plan, DEV 2025-510, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Lou Krinkus. I'm a planner here in the city of Daytona Beach. First, I want to preface by saying that some of the information, mainly some of the square footages that you see in your staff report, they are not accurate. There was some outdated information in some of the documents that were submitted, and I have them fixed for my PowerPoint presentation, but please be aware that there are some of these inaccuracies that I was not able to get fixed in time. So this is a request by Mark Dowston Associates, Inc., on behalf of Daytona Beach CV Real Estate LLC to construct a 29,302 square foot medical office building as part of Phase 2 of the LPGA Medical Center Plan District Agreement. The medical office will be one story and include 181 parking spaces. The lot is located on the south side of LPGA Boulevard, east of Clyde Morris. And there's an aerial. Current future land use is mixed use. It is a PDG, LPGA medical. And there is the aerial view of the existing conditions where you can see that phase 1 has already taken place and phase 2 will be in the vacant half. So on October 7th, 2020, the City Commission approved the LPGA Medical Center PD agreement and rezoned approximately 7.29 acres from M3 General Industry to PDG Plan Development General. The site includes the previous phase of the LPGA Medical Center PD agreement, which is 8,303 square foot medical facility with parking and half the lot remaining vacant towards the east. The LPGA Medical Phase 2 site plan proposes a 29,302 square foot medical office building, which is a slight modification of the development plan of the PD, but it keeps the overall intent of the same, and construction takes place in the vacant half of the existing lot. And there you can see the proposed site plan. Some notes on the parking, that there is 118 required, 181 provided with a surplus of 63 spaces. There is a rendering, proposed landscape plan, and staff recommends the approval of the LPGA Medical Phase 2 major site plan application to develop this 29,302 square foot medical office building, parking lot, and associated site improvements. A majority of the planning board members present and voting is required to approve the site plan.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff? No? Wonderful. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Happy New Year's.
Hi.
My
Happy
name is
New Year.
Mark Doust. I'm with Mark Doust and Associates. And this is a continuation of a project we started several years ago. We originally thought it might be 4 parcels. Had a surgery center built as the first phase. And then lo and behold, we have someone who came and pretty much chewed up the whole rest of it. So that's what that is. Also want to apologize. Luke puts together a great report. I had a bad number on our plan. I think everyone knew what I meant because of conflict in numbers, but that's the confusion was caused not by Luke, but by our plan there. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them.
Okay. Any questions for applicant? No? There you go. Nice and easy.
Thank you.
Good job.
Is there anyone that would like to speak for item 4D, for or against it? Nope, we don't have anyone. Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve agenda item for the quasi-judicial area hearing, major site plan approval, DEV 2025-510, LPGA Medical Phase 2.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, properly second and possibly third. No. Let's go for the vote. All those in favor of it, say aye. Aye. Opposers have the same right? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you very much, and appreciate you. Have a wonderful night. Then, all right, we move on to other business, and we're gonna move on to item 5A. This is reports from boards. Downtown Blue Road Redevelopment Area Board report. None. 5B, Midtown Redevelopment Area Board report.
No report.
No report. Beachside Redevelopment Area Board report.
He's not here.
None. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, a report. No report. Public comments. I don't have any green forms, but here comes
Yeah, Mr. Public.
Mr. John.
Mr. John Q. Public.
We can count on you, sir. Thank you.
And hopefully somebody behind me will also come up. But no, well, because I think it's necessary the public should come. And I would
Yes.
would
we
rather have like
appreciate you.
100 more people behind me taking an interest in the city. I caught the gentleman outside with regard to the checkers to inform him what the city is planning across the street. Because you were talking about having that one done at the same time. So to encourage him, I told him what the CRA was planning. And I don't know if you guys are aware of what the CRA is planning in that area. They've purchased almost all the land between the railroad tracks and Martin Luther King, between Mary McLeod Bethune and ISB. The Spano, that is not going to be purchased, but all the area behind it and along Martin Luther King is being purchased. They've got most of it done. All right, I think there's 1 house and 4 vacant lots. So what they're planning on is a town center for Midtown.
Yeah.
Now, about 10 years ago, we had this plan, et cetera, and some of you may have read it, some of you may not have, but and I thought it was on the other side behind Bucks is where they were going to plan on it, and now all of a sudden it's somewhere else. But I just wanted to let you know, because I don't think the CRA tells you what's going on, because that really should help you when things happen along with the corridors. So, because the public doesn't know, and then last night, the city surprised everybody by saying they want to buy this property on A1A and Main Street. And we just had a Main Street board a few days earlier, and it was never mentioned. So the board was a little bit upset. If you're going to spend $4 million and you're going to tear down a historic building on Main Street, it's sort of kind of something that you should mention.
Exactly.
So I know you guys are not, you don't have anybody come before you tell you what the CRA boards are doing, but I think it's something that should be done so that you're aware of what's going on in the areas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, I don't have anyone else for us comments, public comments, staff comments.
Thanks. I just, a couple of things. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, Mr. McLean was the representative for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and he used to attend those meetings. I'm going to talk to the committee. I think they were requesting that we have a representative from the planning board on that meeting. I'm not going to ask you to vote tonight for a planning board, but consider this for maybe the next meeting if anybody is interested in being on that board. But I do want to talk to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee just to make sure that they still would like a planning board member on that board. So that's it. The other thing is just welcome Captain Scott Lee to the planning board, and it's great seeing you here.
Thank you.
Yep, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for being. Okay, board comments. Any board comments, members? Captain, you want?
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and just want to thank the commission for giving me the opportunity to serve, and I'm looking forward to working with city staff and the board and the public to try to do my best here and serve the city well.
Thank you. Welcome. Ms.
Welcome.
Washington? Ms. Washington, you have any comments?
No, it's just time.
Mrs. Vance? No. Mr. Robinson?
No, sir. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Happy New Year to all of you, and glad to see you. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. This concludes our meeting. Meeting adjourned.
It is sad but true that for years, some people have been using storm drains to dispose of their wastes. A lot of people still don't know that storm sewer systems aren't like sanitary sewers. Sanitary sewers take waste from bathrooms and kitchens and clean them up. Storm sewers, on the other hand, do not treat or clean up anything passing through them. Storm sewers are just pipes and ditches designed to channel clean stormwater runoff away from urbanized areas. One of the responsibilities of municipalities that operate storm sewer systems is to prevent what the EPA calls illicit discharges. Illicit discharges are any discharges of non-storm water into or through the storm sewer. Many of us see one of the most common sources of illicit discharges every day: trash that didn't quite make it into an outdoor dumpster or trash can.